Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started pretty swiftly here with this webinar on emerging MDS applications in the right-of-way. Thanks for joining us for this topic for the next hour. We have 4 different presenters who are going to be sharing 4 different projects from 4 different cities. So I'm going to start with some housekeeping and a little bit of a tech note. We figured out how to remotely control the slide deck for each presenter. Right now, though, I think there's 3 people maybe controlling my mouse. So I'm just making a note of that as we get going. So all in the realm of new technologies. So would love to have everybody, if you're a participant, change your name in the participant list, as well as adding in whatever city, agency, company you might be coming from. We encourage you to use the chat and the Q&A feature. Chat is like kind of a nice little area to drop in a discussion point, a small comment, maybe say, hi, I'm coming from this city, great to join you today. Say hi to people you know. Q&A is an excellent spot to share specific questions you might have about the projects. So please utilize that. After each presentation, we will have some times for Q&A. It may be a minute, it might be a few more than that. And because there's 4 presentations, we don't anticipate having a ton of time. So please use that Q&A feature and we'll try our best to kind of follow up on any of the discussions that are happening. Lastly, this is being recorded. We will upload this to the OMF's YouTube channel and email out materials to registrants and attendees. So, and if you can't see the participants list, if you can see your own little box, and then there's three dots that come up, you should have the rename option there if you can't see it there. I already mentioned some of the agenda, but we're going to do some welcome and introductions. We have these 4 presentations, Raquel Corchado from the city of Chicago, Akshay Malik from the city of Philadelphia, Armand Shabazian from the city of Seattle, and Stephanie Dock from Washington, D.C. I didn't add the agency names. I hope that's okay, but geographically, this is where we're coming from. First, OMF announcements. We have 2 to share. One is the OMF Summit track at CoMotion LA is coming right up November 12th and 13th. Please register, join us for that. The OMF will be there. We're going to have some dedicated programming talking about topics like this, as well as others in the realm of the future of mobility. We'll drop a link in the chat just if you want to take a look at the speakers, the program, and register yourself. If you're an OMF member, you should have gotten an email with info on how to register for free. Second, this work is made possible by the OMF members, commercial members, premier members, associate members. All of these OMF members make this possible, fund our work, and allow us to do things like putting on these webinars. You're going to hear a lot coming up about MDS, starting with Andrew sharing a bit of an overview and where we're going. We encourage everyone to join us for the working groups. We'll share in the chat ways for you to sign up, get on the email list so you don't miss any notifications for that. But we would love to see you there. And with that, I'll send it over to Andrew for a short MDS intro.
Awesome. Thanks, Leo. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Great to see so many familiar names and many new ones participating here. A quick kind of context setting overview of the mobility data specification. The MDS is now more than 6 years old, is used by 900 plus agencies around the world, and over 2 billion trips have been processed through MDS. This is no longer a new thing. This is now a tried and tested global data specification for managing the two-way communication of mobility-related information between public agencies and shared mobility services operating in the public right-of-way. That includes everything from micromobility, including bikes and scooters, to car share, taxis, ride hail, and now more and more services in the autonomous realm, such as robo-taxis and delivery robots, which we're going to talk more about today. Really exciting to see the evolution of the use of the spec and its continued development to incorporate additional use cases as needs and opportunities change within agencies and operators. Just really wanted to emphasize the two-way exchange of information, both about agencies receiving really important information about the management and compliance of shared mobility systems on the streets of cities, but then also, as we're going to get into a little bit more today on this topic, to be able to share digital policy, to be able to communicate from the agency to the operators things like speed limits or geofenced no-go areas, designated parking areas, be able to communicate digitally in a machine-readable format that really important policy about the way these systems operate on our streets. All right, that's it for the really quick overview of MDS. We'll have ample time for discussion and Q&A as we get into it. I'll turn it back to Leo.
Thanks, Andrew. We are starting off with Chicago, presentation on delivery robots. Raquel, do you want me to forward the slides or do you want to do the fancy remote control?
Yeah, if you want to share the remote control, I think I'm the only one who doesn't have it, but if not, just for the sake of time, I can just say, oh, let me see.
You should have it now. Yep.
Oh, okay, and then, Hannah, how do I go back? Maybe Leo, you can take over and we'll go from the start.
Yeah. We're just trying this out. It's fun to be
Yeah.
able to test
Yeah, maybe just one more
pilot
back.
new
Yeah.
slides. Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Okay, maybe just one more back. Okay, so yeah, hi, I'm Raquel Gurchalo here. I am with Chicago Department of Transportation, and today I'll be presenting on delivery robots in Chicago. Just kind of a brief overview. We've been using MDS for other areas such as scooters and bikes, but the newest piece that we've been having for since the end of last year, actually, December 2024, is with delivery robots. So a quick overview for today is kind of the personal delivery device pilot and ordinance, the requirements that with those requirements, we added, it's baked in that one of the data requirements include MDS. MDS in action, how do we use it today, or like the benefits. Again, like MDS has 6 policies, 6 APIs regarding the MDS, and then how we use those today regarding hotspots, routes, policy, and compliance. And then kind of a brief overview of the roadmap, where we are today, and then where we're going. And then kind of what gave way to us having personal delivery devices in Chicago. There was an ordinance approved in 2022 for personal delivery devices. Operators, they can apply using an emerging business permit. CDOT collaborates with BACP, Business and Consumer Protection, to support with the data management, policy, and compliance efforts. And again, this first started in 2022, but has been active live on the ground December of last year, and the pilot will be running to all the way until, has been extended to run all the way until May of 2027. And then our first one was Coco. So a little photo of Coco here in Chicago. Again, we started in the winter, so this kind of who we've started this pilot with. And I see that they're on the call as well. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. And so there was a brief overview of MDS, so I'm not going to go into that, but we did, in terms of how we've done it with our other programs in the city, whether it be Divvy Micromobility or the scooter licensing that we also operate with BACP. We do require micromobility operators, and we're kind of seeing as PDDs as well, to have that in the terms and condition that they have to have MDS before they can go live and operate in the city. So gave a little bit of overview of that. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but there are six APIs that are being used. We're using heavily kind of two on the operator side and two on the city side regarding geographies. But again, there was no review in the start, so yeah, for the sake of time, I'll just kind of get into it, Leo. Yeah, and then kind of one of the fun things that we can do that just lets us know, like, yes, there's APIs and there's a lot of data coming through, but how does this data help us, right? Or on a city side. So we've partnered with our operator, our vendor here for data management and visualization, Populous. So we use their platform to see where trips are starting and where trips are ending. So we kind of see like two-sided, right? On the left side, there are different filters, and these are using different specifications that are also provided via MDS, such as if we want to see trip origins, if we want to see which operator, which in this case we started with Coco December of last year, which vehicle type, we have the delivery robots, and then we can use different geographies. In this case, one of the geographies we're using, so it could be kind of more detailed view is 500-meter hexagons. So we're using that to also see like, oh, this is like a very heavily used area of trip starts and trip ends, and where a lot of these vehicles are having are starting and ending their trips. And again, we use this across different platforms. So we use this with scooters, bicycles, but also we're using this for the new PDDs that have started as last year. And this just lets us know, where there's a lot of demands for vehicles. And then if we go to the next slide, there's also routes. So if we want to know which are the most heavily used public right-of-ways that these vehicles are using, there's also, with the data that's being collected with the GBFS and then MDS specifications, we're seeing which are the right-of-ways that that are most heavily used for these vehicles. Again, they can operate on the sidewalks and also use crosswalks to get to different points. But this just lets us know where the vehicles are operating, where there's a lot of demand, and just lets us know also where what are the routes that are most being used by this vehicle. And again, a lot of this is made possible with the data that's incoming and then with our vendor to help organize it and be able to visualize it in a way that's helpful for us determining those heavily used routes within the city. Then there's also other in terms of like the APIs for policy. There's different no-go zones. There's anything that's park district, anything that's central business district, anything that's airports. We can create and publish those policies, as well as no ride zones. And then again, this is a lot of the data that's coming through MDS that we can publish. This is one example, but there's different zones that we can create, or either we already have available in our data portal that we can download and ingest into this area. And it doesn't have the publish button there, but once we publish that, that goes to the operator so they know that, hey, this is what we are looking forward to using for geofencing and no-go zones, so that that this is where the operation can take place. So I just use one example of policy, but there's an array of policies. If there is a maximum of 50 vehicles or 100 vehicle maximum, we can also create a policy and also create a policy in terms of having, okay, this is a vehicle fleet maximum. And then so if it ever passes that, we also know like, okay, this is over. We need to talk with our vendors and just, confirm, that has not been the case. We've got really great partners to start with. But there is a lot of features here. I just used one in terms of like what Andrew was mentioning before, like no ride zones, funny enough, but there's other arrays of policies that we can create in terms of like fleet maximum and seeing where these vehicles are distributed with all that data that's coming over using MDS that we can create policy around, publish, and that goes to the operators as well. So not just the city side, but the operator as well knows what, what is occurring today. And then kind of where we are today. So where we are today, we've had over 10,700 miles driven for order deliveries. This is since December. This is from December to July. There's been over 6,000 orders delivered, and there's been 45 different bots that you have found, that you can find within the city. So that's kind of where we are today. I know Coco's on the call, so appreciate them joining as well. So it's been December, so we've been, today's September, so 9-10 months into the pilot, with a little bit more to go. But yeah, that's where we are today in terms of kind of like the highlights of our first operator that's come into the city. And then kind of where we're going, and just kind of an overview of where we're starting, where we're going. In September of 2022 was when City Council passed the ordinance to be able to pilot PDDs using the emergent business permit. In December of 2024, our first operator, Coco, has gone live in Chicago. It's been a good success. It's been a lot of we haven't heard any negative feedback from anyone. So everything that we hear from either city council or folks using, or folks seeing them, it's been a good response, which is nice to hear from the city as well, on the city side. So it's been a lot of a nice welcoming to the city of Chicago. Our next kind of we're here in September 30th. So today as well is the go live for the second operator who's applied to the business permit, and has MDS also live as of this last week. So they are all ready to go as well. So we will have our second operator coming into the city as of today. And oh, well, that kind of came in a different order, but no worries. Where we are today is the OMF Emerging Business webinar. And then today as well, we will have our second operator going live in the city. And the pilot will be wrapping up in 2027. It could be up to city council if this turns into a program or just turns into a permit that gets extended every 2 years. More to come on that, but it's still early days. But yeah, so far, have one operator, another one coming to the city, and it's been a good response today. So we're happy to be able to have something in place that there's a lot of lessons learned when we use MDS for scooters and bikes, and now having that in place for PDDs is very welcomed and helpful to have for this next go around. So that's kind of where we are today. That's where we're going. And then yeah, the APIs in terms of geographies and creating policies and being able to push that out, as Andrew mentioned, is a feature that we're going to be using more and more. And everything that's being tracked is super helpful in terms of like where these are and routes being used and how we can best manage that as well. So that's kind of the overview of where we are today with PDDs. More to come. And yeah, if there's any questions, Leo, I don't know if that's where we'll pass on today, if that goes on to after everyone presents.
You did great on timing. So we had a couple questions come in. I am seeing one that might be a really quick one for you to answer from Janet Lowe. Is 10,700 miles driven total or for just orders?
It's to and from. So from the destination, from where they pick up and deliver and to the next destination. So that's destination focused, like picking up and delivering.
And David had a question around some delivery robots may ride within vehicles to get to a location, and then they depart to make a delivery and then return to a vehicle for another delivery. And you may not know the answer to this, but do you know if that's covered in your MDS policy or feed?
A delivery such as a van?
That's what it's indicating, yeah.
Well, at least those miles are referenced to, and then the routes that are taken to, those are just for the robots per se. So like their feed is on each of the robots, so that would be, that's not van specific. There could be like operator drop off, but we use more that functionality for like micromobility rebalancing, but not for PDDs.
And similar to micromobility rebalancing, if a vehicle has 24 scooters in it, MDS is not capturing those vehicles as they're being driven in the van to the place that they're then being distributed. And so if a van has several sidewalk delivery robots and then they are on trip once they leave that van, that is what is being captured through MDS.
Thanks, Andrew. We have another question from Bern Grush. How are other public area mobile robots, non-delivery ones, handled? For instance, security maintenance, ones on the sidewalk or maybe in the crosswalk.
Can you repeat that question? And I'm sorry,
maybe Bern can add some more. Yeah.
I just can't see the chat for some reason.
Oh yeah, yeah. The question was how other public area mobile robots that are not for deliveries handled. And you might not be doing this currently, but for instance, for security maintenance or advertising, like not ones that are actually delivering something.
Well, that might be, I'd have to follow up on that, but in terms of what we have in MDS, like for Chicago, on the Chicago side, is for bikes, scooters, and PDDs. If we were to get AVs in the future, we'd also be very interested in having NDS as a requirement for that. But that's the three different devices that we have so far that are via MDS.
And if an agency manages or regulates those other types of robots in the public right of way, MDS certainly can be used to manage that system. Right now, the context and kind of the use case is a city permitting the operation of PDDs in the public right of way, and that's how MDS is being used in that particular case.
Great. We have one more question. I'm going to see if maybe we can talk about this one in the chat as we get started with the next presentation. But Aileen was wondering what type of questions came up as you were getting approval for this pilot from council, from the public, when it was first introduced a few years ago. So we'll try to, or maybe if you have a thought right now, we could get to it and then have Akshay go.
Yeah, actually a lot. This was introduced in 2022, but it actually went live in 2024, and we got City Council to extend it to 2027. A lot of that is because it's kind of newer in the field, and because there was like, how is this also like data requirements? I think as MDS has come into place and more familiarized, there is something that we can point to and like how we can track these, how we can have some compliancy around it as well. So in terms of like having the scooter license in place for so many years prior and using MDS and that being kind of very helpful in a way of tracking data, having policy, being able to enforce geozones or send out relevant information. I think having that we start as a pilot and now as a permit in place made it easier for other pilots and permits to come into place using a lot of that similar requirements. Maybe back then there was not, and I've been a year here to see that, but I think having a successful pilot really opens the door. Using some data requirements really opens the door to have other pilots in place and using as much as that as possible. So I'll just mention that having had a successful scooter pilot has really helped with this pilot, and certainly these two pilots will certainly help when AVs come, because we know there's a lot of interest with automatic vehicles and as well. So I think that really has helped with kind of like being able to point to something that has been working and just kind of not reinventing the wheel, but just making requirements or making changes based on different vehicle needs and different policy needs and different intergovernmental needs. Like we partner with BACP, so being able to be iterative and nimble has really helped with not having to do so much net work at the start for additional pilots. I hope that's helpful, yeah. And I can also reply in the chat for the sake of time as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Yep, Raquel will be in the chat as well if you have additional questions about Chicago's project. And I'll invite Akshay to present, and you have control of the screen share too.
Hi all, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Leo, can you confirm you can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And it looks like control is working. So my name is Akshay Malik. I am the Smart Cities Director here in the City of Philadelphia, which, as Rick was saying, pilots help. This is what we do in Philadelphia. We pilot crazy ideas, and usually that leads to more crazy ideas, and we are able to show proof is in the pudding. There's evidence, and then we can go from there. This project, the one I'm about to talk about, came from a smart loading zone pilot, which was one of the first deployments of CDS back in the day. So the project we're talking about is we call it the digital right of way. It's the stage 1 funded smart grant funded project. It's a group of projects where we've developed a few technologies in partnership with several vendors, and so I'm going to just go on to the core of what we've developed in this presentation. Let's see. I thought the clicker was working. Leo, I may need help going forward. Yeah, let's just go old school. So yeah, a quick overview of what I'm presenting, a quick scope of what we do and what we don't do in this project. There are other projects that we are working on in partnership with Streets Department, and this one has a narrow scope, but we'll talk about that. Then I'll talk about what is the current state of the analog right-of-way management, talk about the data structure, which is also referred to as topology in some of our documentation. I want to keep it accessible, just call it data structure here. The API development, I'll skip through that real quick because OMF, everybody here knows what the API is, but how it's sort of catering to the specific use case is something I'll talk about. Software implementation, digital displays, and how we're going from city pilot to citywide, or at least how we plan to. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here are actually four domains in which things exist, and we're doing just the orange one. So the leftmost is automated payment inspection. There's an open RFP that my team is working on with Smart City, with the Streets Department, where we are looking at how asset mapping and data collection will happen. That is not in the Smart Grant. Then we have CityWorks asset management system, where the collected data can then be manipulated to issue work orders, do improvements on that asset. That is not covered as well. What we are covering in this project is the digital right-of-way policy, or like the publishing of that policy based on the asset information that we can get from a centralized data asset management system, which is CityWorks in our case. We are also not going to help navigational support. So for example, if you want to read somewhere, Google Maps and Apple Maps, that sort of space is not covered here. We're just issuing information or publishing information of what is permissible and where, but we're not helping you get to the location that you want to. So navigational support is not covered. Next slide, please. So here's an example of what you can think of as a use case that ties everything. So if you think of a fire hydrant, the first automated payment inspection will just find out where the fire hydrant is located in its sort of collection of data. CityWorks will help issue work orders to paint it or repair it if it needs repair. But in our case, we will issue or publish policies using a data spec to the world or like over the internet, saying where is that no parking policy that is in the curb space or in the parking lane. So the fire hydrant sits in the sidewalk, but the no parking is in the curb space or the travel lane. And then the Google Maps will probably use that and tell you, or Apple Maps, or with your preference on the navigational support, will help you find the parking, navigating where you shouldn't park based on the published information from the city, right? So that's the scope of this work. Next slide, please. So what's the analog version that we deal with today? I'm sure everybody in most cities have seen this. This is specifically, these images are from Philadelphia. We expect a human being to look at these images and say, make a determination whether you can go through the space or park here or do whatever use is permissible in that lane of the right-of-way. Next slide, please. So yeah, you can go to the next slide as well. I mentioned we did a smart loading zone pilot way back in 22, 23, where we understood that the scope of smart loading zone was limited to the curb space. And if we were building a system that was not restrictive, we would build it for the entire right of way. It has economies of scale, but essentially programmatically thinking, a a street closure or a curb regulation is similar in the sense that it tells you from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., this red box now belongs to Leo. and nobody else shall use it, right? And that is per the regulation of this travel lane or this sidewalk lane, etc. So programmatically, or if you're thinking of building a system, it's the same. You're applying rules to a lane of the right of way. We also learned that the operating granularity or resolution at which streets department operates, issues permits, does parking, is also per lane, per foot, per unit of time, say per hour, per day, etc. So we had to change two fundamental things to even enable the digitization of the right of way from this version. Moving on to the next slide. So the first thing was an underlying data structure. Like most cities or all cities that I know of, we use a centerline data currently where each intersection is a point and a line connecting those points is a centerline that is the abstraction of the entire length and width of the block. We're moving from this, next slide please, to a new geo asset and policy system where you can double click into your centerline and see centerlines for each lane and have geo assets that are tethered or linked to where they're physically located and where their policy implications are. If you remember the fire hydrant example I gave earlier, it will be tethered to the sidewalk lane or the sidewalk center line here for where it's physically present, and its policy implications will be tethered to the curb lane or the parking lane where there is no parking for 30 feet of space in front of this fire hydrant. Next slide, please. So this is an image of the current level of abstraction at which centerline operates at. So you have to click this and write a story about where you need a closure right now in the city or where you want to park. Everything happens at this level of abstraction. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the level of resolution we want to achieve in this project, or we sort of have achieved. Next slide, please. So the other part, as all of you, as users of OMF-based APIs, you would know that if you're trying to digitize, you need the city to now talk to a car and a phone, and that requires, next slide, please, an API, which is basically a set of questions and answers. I won't go deep dive into what an API is, assuming most people understand what that is. Next slide, please. But the way to get to it is you create the specification, which I would like to call like the recipe of a dish, and then the implementation, which is cooking the dish. The recipe just tells you the ingredients and how you should go about. It doesn't get you to smell the dish, taste the dish, or even tells you what kind of utensils to use or stuff to use. Implementation is cooking the dish and you can actually taste it. In the case that we are in right now, we are just cooking 2 plates. Everybody gets a spoon, like it, don't like it, and we go from there. It's not being served every evening like a restaurant of 50 tables each night. It's just a stage 1 pilot. So next slide, please. To do the recipe, we're working with Open Mobility Foundation to own the recipe. This is where the APIs live for CDS and MDS. And we're working on the implementation with INRIX. The product is called Road Rules, and Arcadis. These are 2 prime vendors, but like there are other vendors involved. Next slide, please. So this is like just to say each lane is getting geo asset information mapped and added to the software implementation. And it is also getting its policy information mapped and added to the software implementation. Don't have to read the text, but yeah. This image shows you the road rules, how it's sort of ingesting a ton of geo asset data and how it'll get linked to each lane. Next slide, please. This shows you how we can clip out parts of the right of way, parts of the lane, and then assign policies to it, right? So and there'll be a video showing the demo, but essentially you can now double click into the center line, make it open, the configuration opens up, and then you can choose parts of the lane and assign policies to it. Next slide, please. And something like this will show up where you can visualize and see the operational resolution at which you're issuing permits. This does 2 things. One, it matches the operational resolution of the map to your operating resolution in your schedules and permitting. Second, it allows you to visually inspect for any kind of conflicts, which hopefully in some future version we can resolve in an automated fashion, where you're not just eyeballing 6 GIS layers or 20 GIS layers or different softwares to say, is this a bad idea to give this permit? Will I lock in a neighborhood or an entire block into these two closures? Next slide, please. So what we are also doing is publishing through this road rule software an API that will then be received through a cellular-based digital signage that we will install in the street. The goal here is to say you just don't need to have a fancy car or a phone to receive the benefits or see the benefits of this little pilot. We can reduce the confusion of analog signs by saying what is the current regulation as per this time, given the type of vehicle, the time of the day of the week, and not having you pass through an entire data dictionary posted on the curbside to figure out, can I park here or not, right? So that the time to determination sort of reduces, hopefully. And this is just a way to showcase that the analog world also benefits from digitization in the backend. This is again part of the pilot. We're doing it only at a few blocks. We only have room for 40 signs. Next, I think the last slide. Oh no, so this is the second last slide. This is an overview of where we are. Like the red box is where we are doing the pilot, stage 1, about 40 blocks worth of area, $2 million, 18 months. Hopefully we get to stage 2 grant funding, and then we can go citywide and sort of operationalize it. Last slide, I think there's a short clip of the demo. And this is in Figma, so this is not the original, but this is the intent of the final version. Minrix, our software partner, is working on deploying this, but you can see how we can select a lane. In this case, the user is selecting a sidewalk, assigning a certain policy, which currently we issue as a PDF, which I mentioned earlier. You click on the center line, you write some prose about where you want to do stuff. Now this can help you sort of assign that policy in the way MDS used to do for like large geographies. Now you can do it at the granularity of streetwide or citywide operations for streets department. And you can see different lanes sort of holding the level of information without showing conflicts, right? So this is just a demo of how it looks. Maybe we can speed it up, but I think it's almost done. But yeah, and the idea is like you can see how associated geo assets on the right-hand panel show up for any policy that you issue, and then there's an internal. You can send it out for internal review, and then it can be published through the API. That's I think that's the end.
That's the end. Thank you for that. And we had some items come in through the chat. I'm aware of our timing. Actually, you had some questions here. If you might be able to jump in and participate within the chat, I think it's best if we move on to Armand now. And then if we have time at the end, I think Janet's question in particular on the environmental impact of going from analog to digital for an entire city. That's a great discussion and question that we can add any thoughts to at the end if there's time. So, oops. Oh, that was the last one. Okay. Now we're ready for Armand and the Seattle DOT autonomous vehicles.
Awesome. Thanks, Leo. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Armand Shahbazian. I'm currently in the mayor's office supporting transportation policy, but for today, I'll put on my DOT hat, where in my permanent role, I act as the Electric and Automated Mobility Policy Advisor, and I'll be speaking on our Digital Conflict Area Awareness Management Program project. Next slide, please. So I'll just do a quick background, go over how this project was informed by our success with shared mobility, and then explain sort of where we're at and where we're going, and next steps. Next slide, please. So for some context, our ability to manage the right-of-way is very important because the majority of Seattle's land area is the public right-of-way, which includes our streets and sidewalks. And so effectively making sure that the network is operating at its max efficiency and also supporting our transportation goals, especially around mode shift, is very important. Next slide, please. Coupled with that is the fact that 60% of Seattle's greenhouse gas emissions are from transportation. So any work that we do to influence the ways that people use the streets, especially for their day-to-day movement, is very important. Next slide. So to close, our influence over street designs, base allocation among travel options, and supportive programs means that the transportation agency plays a very central role. Next slide. So for some context, Washington State has allowed autonomous vehicle testing since 2017. Next slide. We are in a current space where Washington still remains a testing-only state, but we do expect legislation that would allow for commercial deployment. Policymakers in Washington have also indicated that Seattle should lead on AV innovation ahead of commercial deployment, recognizing, next slide please, that autonomous vehicle services highly impact urban areas, and that we want to be able to act as a dedicated partner to support network efficiency and access for all road users. So this work builds on our experiences with shared mobility. So as many of you, especially in the public sector and also in the private sector, remember when shared mobility first arrived in cities, it was very chaotic. There wasn't much collaboration or oversight taking place. And thanks to tools like the MDS, we've really been able to flip the narrative on that. And so today, we're using tools like geofencing. What you see on the left is a geofence of our stadium district that has dedicated policies for parking and staging, et cetera. And then what that looks like for users is the image on the right, which is dedicated parking corrals that compel users to end trips in specific areas to make sure that public space is not cluttered. Next slide. And the result of that is that we have seen immense year-over-year growth for micromobility in Seattle. Next slide. What that looks like is we're at 74% year-over-year growth, and our operators are expected to surpass 10 million trips this year. While we've seen lots of success with micromobility, unfortunately, we haven't been able to translate that success yet for car-based transportation. So what we have today is if there's a traffic alert or some roadway impact, we send out a text message or a tweet, or next slide, another tweet. And what you can see is these posts are also coming from different agencies that are still all within the city umbrella. So sometimes there's traffic alerts coming from our fire department, sometimes they're coming from our transportation department, and overall it's not coordinated and it's not shared in a standardized way. So our goal with this project is to provide critical city data in an open and machine readable format that can be used by any transportation operator, essentially replicating the success we've seen with how we're sharing data with micromobility companies. So our project team for this work is, of course, SDOT. As managers of public right-of-way, we're working with the Seattle Fire Department for this initial phase as the source of our data. So we're using Seattle Fire Department's 911 system. Of course, the Open Mobility Foundation is the stewards of the MDS. And then very excited for our collaborators, which includes Blue Systems, who's developing the smart mobility platform that handles our digital policies and APIs and the actual communication with the various operators. And then as well, we're working with King County Metro, who is our transit agency, recognizing the immense benefits that this type of system will have, not just for personal vehicles or shared autonomous vehicles, but also for transit. And then finally, the University of Washington, who is working on the reporting for this project. So essentially, what we have created and what is being created is a system that takes in Seattle Fire Department's real-time 911 dispatching system, which you see on the far left. And so this system provides lots of data, which includes addresses of incidents, the incident type, the number and types of units that are sent, and then additional data that's available to us on the back end, such as real-time positioning of fire department vehicles and additional information. all of that is ingested by Blue Systems into their smart mobility platform, which allows the Blue Systems platform to do the real-time translation of all of that data into various MDS policies based on various aspects of the emergencies. So what that looks like is no-go zones or slow zones based on the number and types of units. And then it's also adaptable as the emergency continues to evolve. So for example, we might issue a policy based on the initial dispatch, and then that gets adjusted as actual fire department vehicles arrive on site so that we're able to geofence from where actual vehicles are positioned. And then all of that is pushed to various companies like autonomous vehicle operators, but also transit agencies, et cetera. And it allows us to monitor how they're using this information. Something that's really exciting is because we're using MDS, the system is very easily replicable for different cities. It's immensely easy to replicate if you use the same 911 dispatching system that Seattle uses. So happy to connect offline with other cities about this. And we're really excited about the potential future use for other modes that are not just autonomous vehicles. And so to really emphasize this, we know that autonomous vehicle companies specifically rely on remote fleet support to assist vehicles near challenging scenes, such as emergency response vehicles. Next slide. But we also know that this information can be really useful for other operations, including transit taxi, mapping companies, TNCs, et cetera. Next slide. We've also seen, first steps at implementing these types of services. So for example, if you use Google Maps or Waze, you might get pop-up alerts that give you advance notice to help inform either the route you'll be taking or the route that the mapping application takes. So we really have seen the value of advance notice, and being able to use robust data to provide that advance notice is something we're really excited to be demonstrating. Next slide. We also know that while this initial version of our system is using the fire department's 911 data as the source, we also have seen the potential for other information, especially around work zones and temporary closures. Next slide. And it also really builds on a lot of the work that's been shared by other presenters, especially around real-time curb management. Seattle is also working on a separate project for real-time curb availability and digital curb policy information. And we see a lot of ways that in the future, these systems can eventually be combined into one for a singular, robust, informative data approach for transportation operators. And so to conclude, we know that connected and autonomous vehicles are coming to our streets. Next slide. And that having standardized two-way data sharing has enabled growth and effective management of shared mobility. Next click. And that we know that this initiative is our first step to bring the success of data sharing to autonomous vehicles as we prepare for their commercial service in our city. And that's the end. So happy to connect over chat. Feel free to email us, find me on LinkedIn. But yeah, really excited to be sharing this project with you all. And thanks again.
Thanks, Armand, and thanks for wearing your different hat for this presentation. I appreciate you making the time for it. We just had one question come in, and then we'll get over to Stephanie's presentation to close us out. From Joseph, does the SDOT dispatch system leverage the work zone data exchange in any way?
In the terms of the data that the city is providing into the system, no, but something we have explored is our state transportation department has a work zone data exchange feed for alerts that they publish. And we have had conversations about for future version, potentially ingesting that feed and doing the same type of translation into MDS. But for our specific City of Seattle work, we're not using work zone data exchange.
Thank you. Thanks, Armand. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching all of our presentations and Please keep asking questions either in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll continue the conversation as best we can once the webinar is over. Reminder, I'll just be sharing a lot of the resources afterwards too, links to the presentations and all of that. So Stephanie, can take it away.
Great, I'll let you do the slide control, mostly because there's almost no slides. Hi folks. Stephanie Dock, I manage the innovation branch at the District Department of Transportation. I came far less prepared. I do not have as pretty of slides. I'm also entirely dealing in the conceptual in some ways, in that we are thinking about how MDS can help us with this and are part of the conversations of proposing changes. But what we've got is a little less formally fleshed out, although hats off to Michael Schnurl for having translated the requests that we had into reality. So for a bit of background, I want to say a yes and to everything you heard from the folks that have already presented. These are things that we are thinking about in some way, shape, or form. But I'm going to focus in particular on what happens and when I say incidents, when we talk about collisions or crashes involving autonomous things. So we have oversight for both autonomous vehicles and personal delivery devices, as we call them, which are the sidewalk delivery robots. And to Bern's earlier question, we don't have a specific way of handling the non-delivery robots at this time, but we are starting to think about it, in particular, if I think if one appeared, council would take action. We are actively working on getting ourselves set up with an eye towards having MDS as part of the programs for both of these. We are a state as well as a city, so have a little bit more direct control, in particular over autonomous vehicles. So we have rulemakings pending on both. In the case of the autonomous vehicles, our legislation only allows testing. We're in the same boat as Seattle. We will have permits coming. Right now, they can actually be here. If you're following the news, Zoox just announced that they have arrived in DC to begin mapping. But we do require that there be a safety operator behind the wheel. And I should say, since I said Zoox, Waymo has been here for a little while, and we've had other operators pass through. But nobody's giving commercial rides, and we don't have deployment legislation at this time. However, thanks to a change that went into effect in March, crash reporting is required even though the permitting program is not yet in place. And on the personal delivery device, oh, back one slide, sorry. On the PDD side, we do have active permitting, sort of. We have one permittee. KiwiBot is operational in a couple neighborhoods. The rest of the program is on hold because council raised the weight limit, which is helpful to get more operators in, but we hadn't written our approach on the assumption that we were potentially going to have multiple overlapping operators. So we're briefly on pause while we figure out how to best address that and make sure that the permanent legislation is in place. On the PDD side, we will have rulemaking coming. The proposed rulemaking that we already put out for comment does require MDS. The AV rulemaking we proposed is thinking about that. And like I said, both programs require instant collision or crash reporting at this time. So forward one. So on the AV side, and I am reporting here just on strictly what is in the legislation because this is what is in effect at this time. I will take your thoughts on what we should do differently within the regulations if you'd like, particularly once we publish our next round of proposed regulation. But essentially any type of a crash triggers, and we have a very fast turnaround within 12 hours. They need to be notifying us that a crash occurred, date, time, the basic severity of it as known at the time, and who to contact for additional information. And then within 5 days, they have to give us a more detailed report with a bit more information. And once the permitting program goes live, there is a requirement for them to have give us the 30 seconds of data logger information in a format that we can read or interact with. So, but it has to say a little bit more, and our general assumption is that unless it's a small property damage only crash, that there would also be a reference to the police report. Going forward to PDDs, the crash, next slide for me, Leo. What do we require on the PDD side? It's a little bit different. Ideally, at some point, we would probably streamline the two programs to have a lot more similarity between them. But at the moment, and I'm reporting what's in our current terms and conditions. Those may adjust once we update the regulations a little bit, but essentially very fast turnaround if there's injury to a person or an animal within a day, if there's some sort of issue in the public space or private, you actually damage someone else's private property, and then any other collisions have to get reported at some point. Found a gap in my terms, so fixing that next round. But basically, they have to tell us very similar things to what we got from the AVs: date and time, which device was involved, the location, where they were traveling at the time, severity, whether they were filed a police report, and any sort of brief narrative. So going forward, one last slide. This leads us to kind of the common themes of where we stand on what we're going to need to know. And this is essentially what the OMF team kind of helped us to take and turn into a bit more of a robust description of what you might want. And thinking about the ability to link reports and update over time, because information will become more clear as these occur. And really the hope with MDS here is that we will get them in a standardized, easily readable format, and that where we've already got MDS feeds running, hopefully doing all of the other things that you've seen people presenting on for what their work is doing for the oversight of different modes, that it'll just feed into that and give us standardized data that we can then leverage and talk about the differences and for us as well, identifying where there are hotspots in terms of problems that are coming up, and maybe do we need to make some adjustments to operations in those areas. And with that, yeah, I'll hand it over to the left side.
Thank you, Stephanie. And we have this kind of MDS edition at the tail end of this.
Yeah, real quick, talking about kind of where MDS is going, and a lot of what you've heard today is already in the spec, and then even more is being built into version 2.1, defined right now, and will be released, kind of finalized and released in the first half of next year. So just wanted to kind of point out, highlight some of what Stephanie was talking about around incidents and crashes. This is an incredibly exciting and important evolution for MDS. The first time that MDS in this future version 2.1 will include crash and incident related data fields. And so we would love to have additional participation and input as we craft MDS 2.1 through the working group discussions over the next few months here. So we'll include information about how to join those working group meetings. They happen monthly. They're virtual. They're open and open to anyone to participate, as well as through our GitHub repository. But wanted to point out one example here of a feature that is going to be a really important development in version 2.1. Thanks.
Thank you. And there's the last slide for Stephanie. Thank you so much for sharing about this. We have 2 minutes at the end here, and I'll invite any questions that haven't yet been addressed. I think we have plenty that have been shared, and grateful for anyone who's chimed in here. And as Andrew mentioned, we have the MDS working group as well as CURB working group. We invite everyone to join and chime in these spaces. Another opportunity to get involved is to become an OMF member. Aileen shared in the chat. Her email is there if you are interested or just want to learn more about membership. And I think with that, we are going to wrap. Thank you so much for everybody who shared presentations and attended the webinar. We'll send an email after this that has information about each project, some materials in the recording. Look forward to you joining us for the next one or at a working group. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.